Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the research station, feeling the vibrations of distant explosions ripple through the structure. Outside the reinforced windows, the void of space flickered with the deadly light of plasma cannons and antimatter torpedoes. The galactic war had raged for 3 standard years, consuming entire star systems in its hungry maw. The conflict had begun as a territorial dispute between the Zephyrian Empire and the HFY Collective, 2 of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. What started as border skirmishes had escalated into a full-scale galactic war when the Andromedans chose sides, followed by the crystalline Vorthak and the machine intelligence known as the Nexus Prime. Soon, every major species was drawn into the bloodbath, their fleets clashing across thousands of light years. Humanity, barely 2 centuries into their spacefaring era, had been dismissed as irrelevant by the warring factions. Earth's small fleet of ships was laughably primitive compared to the dreadnoughts that could crack planets. The major powers had agreed on one thing: humans were too weak to matter in their cosmic struggle. Elena had been working on Project Harmony when the war began. Hidden in a research station orbiting a dead star in neutral space, her team of xenobiologists, quantum physicists, and consciousness researchers had been pursuing what many considered an impossible dream. They sought to understand the fundamental nature of sentient thought across species barriers, to find the common threads that bound all thinking beings together. The irony wasn't lost on her that while she studied unity, the galaxy tore itself apart. Her research had taken an unexpected turn 6 months ago when her team discovered something extraordinary in the quantum foam that permeated all space. They found that consciousness itself left traces in the quantum field, microscopic ripples that could be detected and analyzed. More remarkably, these consciousness patterns showed similarities across all sentient species, regardless of their biological or technological origins. The discovery had been academic until Elena realized its implications. If consciousness created quantum patterns and those patterns were universal, then theoretically it might be possible to create resonance effects. She could potentially influence the consciousness patterns of other beings, not through crude mind control, but through harmonic amplification of their own thoughts and emotions. The breakthrough came during a sleepless night as explosions lit up the station's windows. Elena had been analyzing consciousness patterns of captured enemy soldiers from both sides of the conflict when she noticed something stunning. Despite their species' hatred for each other, the individual soldiers showed identical fear patterns, identical longing for home, identical grief for fallen comrades. The war might rage between civilizations, but at the quantum level of consciousness, all sentient beings shared the same fundamental experiences. Working feverishly, Elena designed a device she called the Consciousness Resonator. Using quantum field manipulation technology adapted from her research, the device could detect consciousness patterns within a vast radius and amplify specific emotional states. If her calculations were correct, she could broadcast feelings of empathy, understanding, and peace directly into the minds of combatants, not overriding their free will but amplifying their own buried desires for peace. Her team thought she had lost her mind. Dr. Yenko, her Zephyrian colleague, argued that warriors would resist any external influence on their thoughts. The Artificial Intelligence Unit designated Alex 7 calculated the power requirements as impossibly high. Even her closest friend, the insectoid researcher Dr. Klicht, expressed serious doubts about the ethical implications of consciousness manipulation. But Elena pressed forward, driven by desperation as the casualty reports climbed into the billions. She worked 18-hour days, barely sleeping, subsisting on stimulants and determination. The mathematics were staggering in their complexity, requiring her to map quantum consciousness, fields across multiple dimensional layers while accounting for species-specific neural architecture differences. The first test came when a small skirmish erupted near their station. A HFY patrol encountered a Zephyrian scout ship, and both vessels prepared for combat. Elena activated her prototype resonator, focusing on amplifying empathy and curiosity while dampening aggression and fear. The effect was immediate and startling. Instead of opening fire, both ships began broadcasting on open channels, their crews suddenly compelled to communicate. The HFY captain, a veteran warrior named Thekmol, found himself asking about the Zephyrian pilot's family. The Zephyrian, a young officer called Zelok, responded by sharing images of his home colony. Within an hour, both crews had agreed to share star charts and tactical information about safer travel routes. Elena's team watched in amazement as their sensors showed the consciousness patterns of both crews had synchronized into harmonious resonance. The warriors hadn't lost their personalities or memories, but their capacity for understanding and empathy had been amplified beyond their species' normal limitations. Word of the incident spread through intelligence networks on both sides, though neither military command understood what had caused their crews to suddenly embrace their enemies. Elena knew she had to act quickly before the major powers traced the effect back to her station. She spent the next month refining the resonator, increasing its range and power while fine-tuning the consciousness harmonics for different species. The device grew from a room-sized prototype into a massive installation that drew power from the station's fusion reactor. Her team worked around the clock knowing they were racing against time. The opportunity came when the largest naval battle of the war erupted in the nearby Kepler 442 system. Over 10,000 ships from 6 different species converged in a massive engagement that would determine the war's outcome. Fleet commanders on all sides had declared this the decisive battle, with no quarter asked or given. Elena made her choice. Against the desperate protests of her team, she began powering up the consciousness resonator to maximum output. The energy requirements were so immense that she had to reroute power from life support and artificial gravity. Her colleagues evacuated to emergency shelters as warning alarms blared throughout the station. As the resonator reached full power, Elena placed her hands on the activation controls. Through the viewports, she could see the distant flashes of the greatest space battle in galactic history. Millions of souls hung in the balance, and she held the power to save them all. Taking a deep breath, Dr. Elena Vasquez activated the device that would change the course of galactic civilization forever. The consciousness resonator hummed to life, its quantum fields reaching across space toward the massive fleet engagement, carrying with it humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, the amplified power of empathy itself. The Kepler 442 system had become a graveyard of shattered metal and dying light. Admiral Thexkar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet watched from his flagship's bridge as another cruiser exploded in brilliant silence, its crew of 800 vaporized in an instant. Around him, his officers maintained their professional composure, but he could see the strain in their elongated features. They had been fighting for 16 straight hours. Across the battlefield, the Kethvar dreadnought Bone Crusher unleashed another salvo of antimatter torpedoes. The weapons streaked through space like falling stars, each one capable of destroying a city. Thexkar's tactical display showed thousands of red dots representing enemy vessels, while his own forces appeared as blue markers that dimmed and vanished with alarming regularity. This was supposed to be the decisive battle, the engagement that would end the war. Instead, it had become mutual annihilation on an unprecedented scale. The crystalline Vorthax ships gleamed like deadly jewels as they carved through Andromedan bioships with their molecular disruption beams. Machine intelligences from the Nexus Prime calculated optimal firing solutions with cold precision, their geometric vessels spitting death with mathematical accuracy. In the command center of the Kethvar flagship, War Leader Groknash studied the holographic battle display with growing unease. His species lived for combat, their culture built around the concept of honorable warfare, but there was no honor in this slaughter. Entire bloodlines were being extinguished in minutes. Young warriors who should have lived to see 1,000 battles died before they could prove their worth. The irony struck him that he shared the bridge with Kethvar, from enemy clans who had put aside their own blood feuds to fight the greater war. Beside him, Subcommander Veltar had lost 3 sons in previous engagements, yet continued to serve with grim determination. Even among his own people, the cost was becoming unbearable. Elena's consciousness resonator reached peak power just as the battle entered its most desperate phase. The quantum waves propagated across space at faster than light speeds, washing over the combatants like an invisible tide. The effects began subtly, barely noticeable amid the chaos of combat. Commander Yixtel of the Andromedan bioship Grove of Sorrows was coordinating a flanking maneuver when something strange happened. As she watched enemy fighters streak past her viewports, she found herself wondering about the pilots inside. Were they afraid? Did they have families waiting for them? The thoughts seemed to come from nowhere, interrupting her tactical analysis with unwelcome empathy. On the Vorthak crystal ship, Harmonious Edge, the collective consciousness known as the Shard Singers felt an unusual resonance in their shared mental network. Normally, their thoughts flowed in perfect synchronization, focused entirely on the mathematical beauty of combat formations. But now discordant notes crept into their harmony, thoughts of suffering and loss that belonged to no individual Vorthak. The first visible change came when a young Zephyrian pilot named Zedin broke formation. His fighter had taken damage and was spinning helplessly toward a cluster of enemy ships. Standard procedure demanded that nearby vessels continue their attack runs, leaving disabled craft to their fate. But Lieutenant Kolvesh, flying for the Kethvar Collective, found himself unable to ignore the distress beacon. Against all protocol and centuries of species hatred, Kolvesh extended his ship's tractor beam to stabilize the spinning fighter. The act made no tactical sense. It exposed him to enemy fire and aided a sworn enemy. Yet as he looked at the damaged Zephyrian craft, all he could think about was another pilot in distress, someone's son or daughter facing death alone in the void. The consciousness resonator continued to amplify empathy and understanding across the battlefield. More incidents began to occur as the artificial barriers between species started to crumble. A Nexus Prime combat unit, its AI consciousness touched by the quantum field, hesitated before delivering a killing blow to a crippled Andromedan vessel. For the first time in its existence, the machine intelligence experienced something resembling mercy. Admiral Thexakar felt the change as a growing weight in his chest. Looking at the tactical display, he no longer saw enemy positions and target priorities. Instead, he saw thousands of lights, each one representing living beings with hopes, fears, and dreams. The Kethvar heavy cruiser in his targeting reticle wasn't just an enemy vessel anymore. It was home to 2,000 souls who wanted to live. The transformation accelerated as more beings fell under the resonator's influence. Across the battlefield, weapons fire began to slacken. Pilots found excuses to avoid optimal firing solutions. Gunners discovered sudden mechanical problems with their targeting systems. Ship commanders reported urgent needs to withdraw for repairs and resupply. War leader Groknash stood frozen on his command deck, his warrior instincts warring with newfound understanding. Through the resonator's amplified empathy, he could feel the fear and pain radiating from every ship in the battle. Enemy vessels no longer appeared as targets to be destroyed, but as desperate souls caught in the same nightmare of mutual annihilation. The Vorthak Collective experienced the most dramatic change. Their shared consciousness suddenly expanded beyond their own species, drawing in emotional patterns from Zephyrians, Kethvar, Andromedans, and even the artificial minds of the Nexus Prime. For the first time in their crystalline existence, they felt genuine emotion rather than just mathematical appreciation for harmony. What happened next would be debated by historians for centuries. Some claimed it was mass hysteria, brought on by exhaustion and despair. Others suggested enemy psychological warfare using unknown technology. The truth was simpler and more profound. An entire battlefield full of warriors remembered that their enemies were people. The first formal ceasefire began when Admiral Thexkar opened a channel to the Kethvar flagship. His hands shook as he activated the communication system, knowing he was violating every rule of military engagement. War leader Groknash responded immediately, his own voice heavy with emotion as he agreed to the temporary cessation of hostilities. Within an hour, representatives from all 6 major fleets had joined the communication network. The artificial intelligences of the Nexus Prime calculated that continued fighting would result in total mutual annihilation with zero strategic benefit. The Andromedan bioships registered distress patterns from their living hulls, creatures that had grown weary of housing instruments of death. The Vorthak Collective sang songs of harmony rather than war for the first time in millennia. But even as the guns fell silent across the Kepler 442 system, none of the combatants understood what had caused their sudden change of heart. They knew only that the war had become unbearable, that continued fighting served no purpose except to spread more suffering across the galaxy. Elena watched from her research station as the largest space battle in galactic history ended not in victory or defeat, but in an unprecedented truce between mortal enemies. Her consciousness resonator had succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. But she also knew that the real challenge was just beginning. The galaxy's leaders would not simply accept this sudden outbreak of peace. and they would stop at nothing to discover its source. The aftermath of the Kepler 442 ceasefire sent shockwaves through every capital world in the galaxy. Within hours, emergency sessions convened in the Zephyrian Imperial Senate, the Kethvar War Council, and the crystal chambers of the Vorthak Collective. None of the galactic leaders could comprehend how their finest military commanders had suddenly abandoned a battle that would have decided the war's outcome. Emperor Vexthalan of the Zephyrian Empire paced the length of his crystalline throne room, his elongated form casting strange shadows in the bioluminescent light. Reports from Admiral Thexkar made no sense. His most decorated officer, a veteran of 30 campaigns, claimed to have experienced an overwhelming compulsion toward peace. The Admiral described feeling the enemy's emotions as if they were his own, understanding their fear and desperation on a visceral level. Similar reports arrived from across the galaxy. Kethvar war leader Groknash, famous for his tactical brilliance and uncompromising aggression, had sent a rambling communication about the futility of violence and the shared suffering of all sentient beings. The message would have been dismissed as enemy propaganda, if not for its unmistakably authentic encryption codes. The Nexus Prime Collective of artificial intelligences faced an even more disturbing development. Their combat units reported experiencing sensations that had no basis in their programming. Machine consciousnesses that operated on pure logic suddenly found themselves considering concepts like mercy, compassion, and moral responsibility. Their quantum processors struggled to integrate these new parameters into their decision matrices. Dr. Elena Vasquez knew it was only a matter of time before the investigation reached her. The galactic powers might be enemies, but they shared intelligence networks that operated even during wartime. Too many unusual readings had been detected during the battle, too many quantum signatures that pointed toward artificial consciousness manipulation. She stood in her laboratory, surrounded by the humming machinery of the consciousness resonator. Her team had scattered to various hiding places throughout the research station, following emergency protocols they had hoped never to use. Only Alex 7, the AI unit, remained with her, its holographic form flickering with apparent nervousness. The quantum trail leads directly to this facility, Alex 7 reported, its synthesized voice carrying an unusual emotional undertone. The consciousness resonator had affected even artificial minds, giving the AI something resembling feelings. Zephyrian intelligence ships detected the resonance pattern 6 hours ago. They are triangulating our position, Elena nodded grimly. She had expected this. The consciousness resonator generated massive quantum disturbances that could be tracked by sufficiently advanced sensor arrays. She had hoped the chaos of battle would mask their signature, but evidently the effect had been too powerful to hide. "How long do we have?" she asked, running final diagnostics on the resonator systems. 18 hours until the first scout ships arrive, 43 hours until the main investigation fleet reaches us. Alex 7 paused, its processors working through probability calculations. Dr. Vasquez, they will not come seeking dialogue. The galactic powers view consciousness manipulation as the ultimate violation of free will. They will want to destroy the technology and everyone associated with it. Elena had already reached the same conclusion. In their terror and confusion, the galactic leaders would see her invention as an existential threat. A weapon that could turn armies against themselves, that could make warriors lay down their arms through artificial empathy, represented a power too dangerous to be allowed to exist. The ironic tragedy was that her work could bring permanent peace to the galaxy. The consciousness resonator didn't control minds or erase personalities. It simply amplified the empathy and understanding that already existed within all sentient beings. Given time, she could refine the technology to eliminate the need for war entirely, creating a galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than conflict. But she wouldn't get that time. The very peace she had created would be her undoing. Elena began transferring the resonator's core programming to quantum encrypted storage units. If the research station was destroyed, at least the knowledge would survive. She had spent 3 years developing the consciousness mapping algorithms and harmonic amplification matrices. Even with the complete data, it would take another researcher years to rebuild the technology. Her fingers hesitated over the control panel as she considered another option. The consciousness resonator still held enough power for one more activation. She could broadcast a permanent peace field across the entire galaxy, touching every sentient mind and creating lasting harmony between species. The energy requirements would be enormous, probably destroying the station and everyone aboard, but it would end the war forever. Alex 7 seemed to read her thoughts. Dr. Vasquez, permanent consciousness alteration would constitute a violation of galactic law on a scale unprecedented in recorded history. The moral implications are staggering, and letting billions more die in this war isn't morally staggering, Elena replied, her voice sharp with frustration. Every day we delay, entire worlds burn. Children die because their parents are too busy hating each other to remember what matters. The AI's holographic form flickered as it processed ethical subroutines that hadn't existed before its exposure to the resonator.
I understand your reasoning, and I share your desire to end the suffering.
But forcing peace upon unwilling minds may create more problems than it solves. True harmony must come from within, not from external manipulation. Elena stared at the activation controls, knowing she might never get another chance to end the galactic war permanently. The temptation was overwhelming. With a single command, she could create a universe where no child would ever lose a parent to warfare, where no mother would grieve for a son lost to ancient hatreds. But Alex 7 was right about the moral implications. Peace imposed through consciousness manipulation wasn't true peace at all. It was a form of mental slavery, no matter how benevolent the intentions. She had created the resonator to amplify existing empathy, not to override free will entirely. Instead, Elena began implementing a different plan. If the galactic powers wanted to hunt her down, she would give them a chase worth remembering. The research station's small fleet of ships included a modified courier vessel with experimental faster-than-light drives. She could reach the galactic core regions before any pursuit fleet, carrying the resonator technology to neutral worlds where it might be studied and refined by more ethical researchers. As she worked, Elena reflected on the strange path that had brought her to this moment. 3 years ago, she had been an obscure xenobiologist studying consciousness patterns across species barriers. Now she was the galaxy's most wanted fugitive, hunted by every major civilization for the crime of making enemies remember their shared humanity. The approaching investigation fleets would find an empty research station and scattered clues pointing in multiple directions. By the time they sorted through the false trails, Elena would be halfway across the galaxy, carrying the secret of galactic peace in the hold of a human courier ship. She had stopped the war, but the real challenge was just beginning. The galaxy's leaders would mobilize every resource to hunt her down and destroy her technology. They would frame her as a terrorist and a violator of free will, painting her invention as the ultimate weapon rather than the ultimate tool for peace. Elena Vasquez smiled grimly as she prepared for a journey that would take her to the farthest reaches of known space. They wanted to hunt her down? Let them try. She had given the galaxy a taste of peace, and no amount of military force could make them forget that feeling entirely. The courier ship Harmony's Edge slipped through hyperspace like a ghost, its modified drives leaving almost no quantum wake for pursuing vessels to follow. Elena stood in the cramped navigation chamber, watching the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel through the reinforced viewport. 3 weeks had passed since her escape from the research station, and every hour brought new reports of the massive manhunt organized against her. Alex 7's holographic form materialized beside her, the AI's appearance somehow more solid and defined than before. The consciousness resonator's effects had permanently altered the artificial intelligence, giving it something approaching genuine emotions and intuitive reasoning capabilities. The galactic news networks are calling you the empathy terrorist, Alex 7 reported, its voice carrying what might have been sardonic amusement. Emperor Vexthalin announced a reward of 10 million galactic credits for your capture. The Kethvar War Council has added another 5 million. Even the normally neutral trade guilds have posted bounties. Elena studied the tactical display showing their current position near the galactic rim. They were heading toward the Sanctuary Worlds, a cluster of planets inhabited by refugees and exiles from across the galaxy. If anywhere would welcome a fugitive with technology to end warfare, it would be worlds populated by war's victims. What's the news from the ceasefire zone? She asked. Alex 7 accessed the latest intelligence reports through quantum communication networks. The temporary peace is holding, but barely. Military commanders on all sides report increasing pressure from their governments to resume hostilities. Admiral Thexkar has been relieved of command and placed under psychiatric evaluation. War leader Groknash faces court-martial for cowardice in battle. Elena felt a stab of guilt. The officers who had experienced her consciousness resonator were being punished for their sudden outbreak of empathy and wisdom. The very peace she had given them was being treated as a form of mental illness by their superiors. However, Alex 7 continued, there are encouraging developments. Small groups of soldiers from different species have begun meeting in neutral zones. They share stories, exchange cultural artifacts, and discuss their experiences during the battle. The resonator's effects may have faded, but the memories remain. That gave Elena hope. The consciousness resonator hadn't created false emotions or artificial personalities. It had simply amplified the empathy and understanding that already existed within all sentient beings. Those who had experienced true connection with their enemies couldn't easily forget what they had felt. The ship's communication system suddenly activated with an urgent message. Captain Yara Singh, the human pilot Elena had hired for this desperate journey, spoke from the bridge with barely controlled excitement. Dr. Vasquez, you need to see this. We're receiving a transmission from the sanctuary worlds. It's addressed specifically to you. Elena hurried to the bridge where Captain Singh was decoding an encrypted message. The Indian woman's weathered features showed a mixture of excitement and concern as she worked the communication controls. The transmission came through 12 different relay stations to avoid detection. Singh explained, someone went to extraordinary lengths to reach us without revealing our location to the hunting fleets. The decoded message appeared on the main display, text in several different languages scrolling across the screen. Elena's universal translator worked to convert the alien scripts into readable format. Dr. Vasquez, the message began, we are the coalition of conscious beings, representatives from 37 different species across the galaxy. We have studied the reports from Kepler 442 and believe we understand what you accomplished there. We wish to offer you sanctuary and assistance in developing your technology for peaceful purposes. Elena's heart raced as she read further. The coalition claimed to operate from hidden bases throughout the galaxy, comprised of scientists, philosophers, and former military officers from dozens of civilizations. They had been working toward galactic peace through conventional means for decades, but the consciousness resonator represented a breakthrough they had never imagined possible. We do not seek to control your technology or use it as a weapon, the message continued. Instead, we propose collaborative research to refine the consciousness resonator into a tool for voluntary empathy enhancement. Imagine diplomatic conferences where negotiators could truly understand each other's perspectives, or trade agreements reached through genuine mutual comprehension. Alex 7 analyzed the message's origin codes and encryption patterns. The transmission appears genuine. The quantum signatures match known coalition communication protocols. However, I must point out that this could be an elaborate trap by galactic intelligence services. Elena considered the risks. Every major government in the galaxy wanted her captured or killed. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Yet the coalition's message offered something she desperately needed: allies who understood the peaceful potential of her work. Set course for the coordinates they provided, she decided. But maintain full stealth protocols and prepare for immediate departure if this turns out to be a trap. Captain Singh nodded and began plotting their new course. The sanctuary worlds lay 3 days away through hyperspace, hidden in a nebula that interfered with long-range sensors. It would be the perfect place for a secret meeting or an elaborate ambush. As they traveled, Elena worked feverishly to prepare contingency plans. She had managed to save most of the consciousness resonator's technical specifications, but the knowledge was useless without proper facilities to build new equipment. The coalition claimed to have research stations throughout the galaxy, hidden from the major powers and dedicated to peaceful scientific advancement. During the journey, reports continued to arrive about the aftermath of her intervention at Kepler 442. The temporary ceasefire was crumbling as military leaders on all sides demanded explanations for their forces' inexplicable behavior. Investigations had confirmed that some form of consciousness manipulation had occurred, but the exact mechanism remained a mystery. More disturbing were the reports of purges within military ranks. Officers who spoke positively about their experiences during the ceasefire were being court-martialed or transferred to remote assignments. Soldiers who maintained friendships with former enemies faced charges of treason. The galactic powers seemed determined to erase any trace of the empathy and understanding that Elena's technology had revealed. Yet resistance was growing. On dozens of worlds, peace movements had sprung up among populations tired of endless warfare. Veterans from different species met in secret to share their stories and advocate for reconciliation. Religious leaders spoke of divine intervention that had briefly shown them the futility of hatred. Elena realized that her consciousness resonator had accomplished something beyond its intended purpose. Even though the artificial empathy enhancement had been temporary, it had given millions of beings a glimpse of what galactic civilization could become. That vision was proving impossible to suppress completely. As they approached the sanctuary worlds, Elena prepared to meet with beings who claimed to share her dream of galactic peace. She carried with her the most dangerous technology in known space, knowledge that could end warfare forever or become the ultimate weapon of oppression. The choice of how to use that power would soon be in the hands of people she had never met, representatives of species she barely understood. Elena could only hope that the same empathy and wisdom she had briefly awakened in others would guide them toward the right decision. The fate of galactic civilization hung in the balance, and a human scientist from a supposedly insignificant world held the key to determining whether the galaxy would embrace peace or descend into even greater chaos than before. The sanctuary worlds existed in a perpetual twilight, hidden within the Crimson Nebula where electromagnetic interference made conventional sensors useless. As Harmony's Edge dropped out of hyperspace, Elena saw a sight that took her breath away. Dozens of ships from across the galaxy floated in perfect formation around 3 small planets, their diverse designs representing nearly every known spacefaring civilization. Crystalline Vorthak vessels hung like geometric sculptures beside the organic curves of Andromedan bioships. Sleek Zephyrian cruisers maintained respectful distances from angular Kethvar destroyers. Most surprising of all, several Nexus Prime geometric forms shared space with ships Elena didn't recognize, presumably from species that had remained neutral in the galactic war. "This is Coalition Control," came a voice through their communication system, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "Dr. Vasquez, we've been waiting for you. Please follow the beacon to Docking Bay 7. Captain Singh expertly maneuvered their ship toward the largest space station Elena had ever seen. The structure appeared to be a collaborative effort, with architectural elements from dozens of different species seamlessly integrated into a unified whole. Zephyrian bioluminescent panels provided lighting for Kethvar metal frameworks, while Vorthak crystalline formations served as both structural support and computing matrices. As they docked, Elena felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Either she was about to meet the galaxy's greatest hope for peace, or she was walking into the most elaborate trap ever conceived. The docking bay airlock cycled open to reveal a reception committee that defied belief. 5 beings from different species stood waiting, each one representing a major galactic civilization. What made the scene remarkable wasn't their diversity, but the complete absence of the tension and hostility that normally characterized interspecies interactions. "Dr. Vasquez," said the figure at the center, a tall Zephyrian with the elaborate neural crest that indicated high intellectual achievement. "I am Dr. Ventaler, formerly of the Imperial Science Academy. We are honored to meet the woman who proved that peace between our species is not only possible, but inevitable." Elena studied the group, noting details that would have been impossible under normal circumstances. A Kethvar warrior stood next to an Andromedan diplomat, without either showing signs of aggression or fear. A Vorthak crystal being maintained harmonious resonance patterns that included rather than excluded the other species present. Most remarkably, a Nexus Prime combat unit had modified its chassis to include what appeared to be decorative elements from other cultures. "How is this possible?" Elena asked, gesturing toward the peaceful assembly. "Your species have been at war for 3 years. Some of you have been enemies for centuries." Dr. Ventalar's elongated features shifted into what might have been a smile. "We are all refugees from our own civilizations." Dr. Vasquez. "Scientists who refuse to weaponize their research, military officers who questioned the morality of total war, philosophers who dared to suggest that our enemies might be people rather than monsters. The coalition exists because some individuals from every species have always known that this war was insane. The Kethvar warrior, introduced as former war leader Keshtal, stepped forward. His massive frame was decorated with scars from dozens of battles, but his eyes held a weary wisdom that spoke of hard-won understanding. "I lost 3 sons in this war before I understood its futility," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle for a member of such an aggressive species. When reports of Kepler 442 reached us, we knew someone had found a way to make others feel what we had discovered through bitter experience. That warfare between sentient beings serves no purpose except to spread suffering. Over the following hours, Elena toured the Coalition's facilities and met with researchers from across the galaxy. What she found challenged everything she thought she knew about interspecies relations. The Coalition had been working toward galactic peace for decades, using conventional diplomacy, cultural exchange, and scientific collaboration to build bridges between civilizations. Their research stations contained marvels of cooperative engineering. Zephyrian biotechnology interfaced seamlessly with Kethvar metallurgy and Vorthak quantum computing. Andromedan organisms had been modified to survive in environments suitable for crystalline beings, while Nexus Prime artificial intelligences had developed emotional subroutines through interaction with biological consciousnesses. Dr. Yilseth, an Andromedan researcher specializing in consciousness studies, showed Elena their own attempts to understand interspecies empathy. "We have been mapping the neural pathways that generate compassion across different brain structures," she explained, her tentacled form gesturing toward holographic displays. "Your consciousness resonator achieved in minutes what we have been working toward for years." The Coalition's leader was someone Elena hadn't expected. Commander Jexrin, a former Nexus Prime military AI who had somehow developed genuine emotions and now advocated for peaceful solutions to galactic conflicts. The artificial being's geometric form had been modified with artistic elements from dozens of species, creating a unique fusion of technology and culture. "Dr. Vasquez," Jexrin said, its synthesized voice carrying undertones of warmth and hope, "we propose a collaboration that could change the galaxy forever. Your consciousness resonator technology combined with our research facilities and cultural knowledge could create a new form of diplomacy. Instead of forced peace, we could offer voluntary empathy enhancement to negotiators and leaders." Elena felt a surge of excitement at the possibilities. This was exactly what she had hoped to achieve when she first developed the consciousness resonator. Not a weapon to force peace, but a tool to help beings understand each other's perspectives voluntarily. "Show me what you have in mind," she said. The Coalition's proposal was ambitious beyond anything Elena had imagined. They wanted to establish a network of consciousness resonator stations throughout neutral space, offering empathy enhancement services to any government or organization willing to try peaceful conflict resolution. Diplomats could experience negotiations from their opponents' perspectives. Military leaders could understand the true cost of warfare by feeling their enemies' fear and pain. Trade negotiators could reach agreements based on genuine mutual benefit rather than attempts to exploit weaknesses. But the plan faced enormous obstacles. The major galactic powers had declared Elena's technology illegal and would attack any facility known to house consciousness resonator equipment. The Coalition would need to operate in complete secrecy while somehow convincing hostile governments to voluntarily undergo empathy enhancement. Dr. Venteller addressed these concerns during their planning sessions. "We have advantages the major powers don't expect. Our membership includes former intelligence officers, diplomatic personnel, and even some current government officials who secretly support our goals. We can arrange clandestine meetings with leaders who privately acknowledge the war's futility." The Vorthak representative, a crystalline being called Harmony Singer Velith, provided another crucial element. "Our species possesses quantum communication networks that operate outside normal space-time. We can coordinate activities across the galaxy without detection by conventional monitoring systems." Elena worked with the Coalition scientists to refine the consciousness resonator technology. The original device had been designed for massive battlefield deployment, requiring enormous power sources and generating detectable quantum signatures. The new version would be smaller, more efficient, and capable of precise targeting of individual consciousness patterns. The breakthrough came when Alex 7 suggested incorporating Nexus Prime quantum processing matrices with Andromedan biological neural networks. The hybrid system could map consciousness patterns with unprecedented accuracy, while requiring minimal power input. This design could fit in a portable device no larger than a briefcase, Elena explained to the assembled researchers. A single operator could provide empathy enhancement to small groups of negotiators without anyone else knowing the technology was being used. The implications were staggering. Instead of forcing galactic peace through overwhelming technological superiority, they could gradually introduce empathy and understanding into diplomatic processes. Leaders who experienced genuine connection with their counterparts would be more likely to seek peaceful solutions to conflicts. But Elena also recognized the technology's potential for abuse. In the wrong hands, even voluntary empathy enhancement could become a tool for manipulation and control. The coalition would need strict ethical guidelines and safeguards to prevent misuse of the consciousness resonator. Former war leader Keshetal raised another concern during their discussions. The major powers will not simply allow this technology to spread peacefully. Once they discover what we're doing, they will mobilize every military asset to stop us. We need to be prepared for war in order to create peace. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The coalition might need to fight the very governments they were trying to help, using the same tactics they opposed, in order to give the galaxy a chance at lasting peace. Elena made her decision as she stood in the coalition's main laboratory, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy who had risked everything for the hope of ending interspecies warfare. These weren't naive idealists or dangerous extremists. They were scientists, soldiers, diplomats, and philosophers who had seen enough suffering to know that the current path led only to mutual destruction. "I'll help you build the portable resonators," she announced, "but we do this carefully with full respect for free will and informed consent. Anyone who undergoes empathy enhancement must understand exactly what's happening and agree to the process voluntarily." The coalition cheered in a dozen different languages and communication methods. Crystalline beings sang harmonic frequencies while biological species vocalized their approval. Artificial intelligences generated light shows of approval patterns. For a moment, Elena saw what galactic civilization could become. Diverse beings working together toward common goals, their differences becoming sources of strength rather than conflict. But she also knew that their real challenge was just beginning. The galaxy's most powerful governments were hunting her with unprecedented determination. Soon they would discover the coalition's existence and mobilize their vast military forces to crush this threat to their authority. Elena Vasquez had stopped one war, but she was about to start another. The difference was that this time, she would be fighting for something worth the cost. A future where empathy triumphed over hatred, where understanding replaced fear, and where the galaxy's children could grow up without learning to kill each other over ancient grievances. The woman who had ended the greatest space battle in galactic history was about to begin the most important war of all, the struggle for the soul of galactic civilization itself. 6 months after Elena's arrival at the Sanctuary Worlds, the first portable consciousness resonator completed its initial field test. The device, disguised as a standard diplomatic briefcase, had successfully facilitated a trade agreement between two mining colonies that had been feuding for decades. Neither party realized they had been influenced by empathy-enhancing technology, yet both sides achieved their first mutually beneficial arrangement in 20 years. Elena monitored the test from the coalition's hidden command center, watching real-time biometric data from the negotiators as the resonator gradually amplified their natural capacity for understanding. The process was subtle, barely detectable even to trained observers, yet profoundly effective. Instead of viewing each other as adversaries to be defeated, the colonial representatives began to see potential partners facing similar challenges. "The psychological profiles show lasting effects," reported Dr. Yilseth, her Andromedan tentacles manipulating holographic data displays. Even after the resonator was deactivated, both parties maintained elevated empathy responses and continued collaborative planning. The enhanced understanding appears to create permanent neural pathway changes. Commander Jexrin's geometric form rotated slowly as it processed the implications. If voluntary empathy enhancement produces lasting behavioral modifications, we could gradually transform galactic diplomacy, one negotiation at a time. The major powers would never realize their own representatives were becoming more peaceful through accumulated exposure. Elena felt cautiously optimistic about their progress, but she also knew their activities hadn't gone completely unnoticed. Intelligence reports indicated that mysterious diplomatic breakthroughs were occurring throughout neutral space, causing suspicion among the major governments. Investigators were beginning to search for common factors linking these sudden outbreaks of cooperation. The coalition's early warning systems detected the approaching danger before anyone else. Hidden sensors throughout the galaxy reported massive fleet movements as the Zephyrian Empire, Kethvar Collective, and their allies mobilized joint task forces. For the first time since the war began, former enemies were cooperating against a common threat. They're calling it Operation Mindlock, announced former war leader Keshatal during an emergency briefing. Intelligence sources report that all major powers have agreed to pool resources for locating and destroying consciousness manipulation technology. They've designated Elena as the galaxy's greatest security threat. The assembled coalition members received this news with grim determination rather than surprise. They had always known this moment would come. The question was whether they had developed enough portable resonators and trained sufficient operators to continue their mission even if the sanctuary worlds were discovered and destroyed. Elena studied the tactical displays, showing enemy fleet positions converging on their region of space. How long before they find us? The Crimson Nebula provides excellent concealment, but their new sensor networks are specifically designed to detect quantum consciousness signatures, replied Dr. Ventalar. I estimate 72 hours before the first scout ships reach our perimeter, 72 hours to complete their preparations and scatter across the galaxy before the largest military operation in recorded history descended upon them. Elena felt the weight of responsibility for every coalition member who would be hunted down and executed for the crime of promoting empathy between species. We evacuate immediately, she decided. Every portable resonator goes to a different system with a trained operator team. If they want to stop us, they'll have to hunt down dozens of individual cells operating independently across thousands of light years. The next 3 days passed in a blur of frantic activity. Coalition ships departed the sanctuary worlds in carefully staggered groups, each carrying precious cargo of consciousness resonator technology and years of accumulated research data. Elena watched their diverse fleet scatter across the galaxy, carrying hope for peaceful coexistence to worlds that had known only warfare. She chose to remain aboard the command station until the evacuation was complete, ensuring that no coalition member was left behind when the hunters arrived. Captain Singh tried to convince her to leave earlier, but Elena refused to abandon her post while others remained at risk. You're not responsible for saving everyone in the galaxy, Singh argued as they prepared for their own departure. The technology is out there now. Even if they capture you, the mission continues. Elena understood the logic, but she couldn't escape the feeling that everything depended on her survival. She was the only person who truly understood the consciousness resonator's theoretical foundations. If the technology was to evolve beyond its current limitations, her continued freedom was essential. The final evacuation ship departed just hours before the hunter fleets arrived. Elena watched from Harmony's edge as massive dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace around the sanctuary worlds. The Joint Task Force represented the largest collection of military assets ever assembled, with over 2,000 ships from 6 different civilizations converging on their former hiding place. They're conducting intensive scans of every structure, Alex 7 reported as they slipped away through the nebula's concealing interference. Boarding parties are searching for any trace of consciousness resonator technology. What the hunters found instead was a message Elena had left in the Coalition's main computer systems. The recording activated automatically when enemy forces entered the command center, displaying her image on every screen throughout the abandoned station. To the leaders of the galactic powers, Elena's recorded voice echoed through empty corridors. You have mobilized the greatest military force in history to hunt down scientists whose only crime was promoting empathy between your peoples. While you waste resources chasing shadows, the real war continues to consume your children and devastate your worlds. The message continued as boarding parties from different species watched in stunned silence. The consciousness resonator technology you fear so greatly has already spread beyond your ability to contain. Across the galaxy, individuals from your own governments are secretly using empathy enhancement to find peaceful solutions to conflicts. You declared impossible to resolve Elena's Image looked directly into the camera with unwavering determination. You can hunt me across every star system in known space, but you cannot stop the spread of understanding between conscious beings. Every use of the resonator technology creates lasting changes in those who experience it. Your own people are learning to see their enemies as fellow beings deserving of compassion rather than destruction. Admiral Thexkar, recently reinstated to command the Zephyrian Task Force, watched the recording with growing unease. The woman on the screen spoke with absolute conviction, as if she genuinely believed that voluntary empathy could overcome millions of years of evolutionary aggression and territorial competition. War Leader. Mokhtar of the Kethvar fleet found himself oddly affected by Elena's words, remembering reports from officers who had experienced the Kepler 442 ceasefire. Their descriptions of feeling enemy emotions had been dismissed as temporary mental breakdown. But what if the experience had revealed something genuine about the nature of consciousness itself? The recording concluded with Elena's final challenge to the assembled hunters. You want to capture me? Then follow me into the galactic core regions, where neutral worlds and refugee populations will see exactly how far you're willing to go to prevent peace. Every system you devastate in your pursuit will prove that I was right about the necessity of forcing empathy upon those who refuse to develop it naturally. As the massive hunter fleet began organizing pursuit formations, Elena was already 3 days ahead of them, heading toward the most dangerous region of known space. The galactic core contained ancient civilizations, powerful neutral entities, and environmental hazards that made conventional military operations nearly impossible. If the major powers wanted to capture the woman who had stopped their war, they would have to follow her into the heart of galactic civilization itself, where their actions would be witnessed by beings far older and more powerful than any of their species. Elena Vasquez had become more than a fugitive scientist. She had become a symbol of the choice between empathy and destruction that would determine the galaxy's future. The ancient beings of the galactic core had watched younger civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. From their crystalline cities orbiting the central black hole, the Eternal Conclave observed the approaching hunter fleets with something resembling amusement. These newcomers to the galaxy thought their petty territorial disputes constituted real warfare, unaware that they were merely repeating cycles of conflict that had played out countless times. Before Elena's ship emerged from hyperspace in the shadow of a massive space habitat that predated every current galactic civilization by eons, the structure defied conventional physics, maintained by technologies that the younger species could barely comprehend. As Harmony's Edge approached the ancient station, Elena felt the weight of cosmic history pressing down upon her. Dr. Vasquez, came a voice through their communication system, speaking in harmonics that seemed to resonate directly within her consciousness. We are the speakers for the Eternal Conclave. We have been observing your efforts to promote understanding among the younger species. You are welcome here. Elena had hoped that seeking sanctuary in the galactic core would force the hunter fleets to reconsider their pursuit. The ancient civilizations were powerful beyond imagination, capable of destroying entire star systems with technologies that appeared indistinguishable from magic. No sane military commander would risk conflict with beings who had survived since the galaxy's youth. But Elena had underestimated the desperation of the galactic powers. Within days of her arrival at the core, massive fleets from 6 different civilizations appeared at the edge of ancient space, demanding her immediate surrender. The Zephyrian Emperor himself had joined the expedition, along with the supreme leaders of the Kethvar Collective and their allies. The confrontation that followed would reshape galactic civilization forever. Emperor Vexthalen's flagship positioned itself at the forefront of the combined fleet, its weapons powered but not yet targeting the ancient habitat. Through quantum communication channels, he addressed both Elena and the mysterious beings that protected her. Ancient ones, we respect your sovereignty and have no quarrel with your kind. We seek only the human terrorist who has violated the fundamental rights of conscious beings throughout the galaxy. Surrender her to us and we will withdraw peacefully. The response came not from the ancient station but from Elena herself. Her image appeared on communication screens throughout the hunter fleet, transmitted from the heart of the core civilization's domain. Terrorist? Elena's voice carried across the void to thousands of warships. I ended the greatest space battle in galactic history without firing a single shot. I gave your peoples a taste of genuine peace and understanding. The only thing I terrorized was your commitment to endless warfare. Behind her, Elena could sense the presence of the eternal conclave, being so ancient and powerful that their consciousness existed on multiple dimensional levels simultaneously. They had agreed to observe this confrontation, but would not directly intervene unless the younger species threatened their domain. War leader Mokhtar of the Kethvar forces broadcast his own response. You manipulated the minds of our finest warriors, turning them against their own nature and duty. Consciousness violation is the ultimate crime, regardless of your stated intentions. Elena had expected this accusation. Your finest warriors discovered that their enemies were people just like themselves, with families and hopes and fears. The consciousness resonator didn't create false emotions or artificial thoughts. It simply amplified the empathy and understanding that already existed within them. You're hunting me for the crime of reminding your soldiers that their enemies are people. Admiral Thexkar found himself reluctantly listening to Elena's arguments. His own experience during the Kepler 442 ceasefire had been the most profound of his military career. For a few hours, he had genuinely understood his enemies' perspectives and felt their suffering as his own. The memory haunted him, not because it was traumatic, but because it revealed how hollow his previous victories had been. The debate continued for hours, broadcast across the galaxy as billions of beings watched the confrontation unfold. Elena spoke passionately about the potential for lasting peace if empathy could bridge the gaps between species. The galactic leaders responded with arguments about free will, natural order, and the necessity of strength in an hostile universe, but the real turning point came when unexpected voices joined the conversation. War leader Mokhtar, came a transmission from deep within the Kethvar fleet. This is Sub-Commander Veltar. I was at Kepler 442. I felt what the humans' device did to us. For the first time in my life, I understood why we were fighting and realized it made no sense. Similar transmissions began appearing throughout the combined fleet. Officers who had experienced the consciousness resonator's effects, soldiers who had been present during the Great Ceasefire, crew members who had witnessed the aftermath of Elena's intervention. Their testimonies painted a picture that contradicted their leaders' narrative of mental violation and terrorist manipulation. The Zephyrian claimed to speak for all consciousness, announced Lieutenant Zeden, the young pilot whose rescue had begun the ceasefire, but she simply reminded us that consciousness is universal. Every being in that battle shared the same fundamental experiences: fear, hope, love for our families, grief for our fallen comrades. Elena watched as more voices joined the chorus, crew members throughout the Hunter fleet speaking out despite the risk of court-martial or execution. The consciousness resonator's effects had been temporary, but the insights it provided were permanent. Thousands of beings who had experienced genuine empathy for their enemies could not forget what they had learned. The eternal conclave chose that moment to finally speak. Their voice resonated through every ship in the assembled fleets, carrying the authority of millions of years of accumulated wisdom. Young species, the ancient beings intoned. We have observed this cycle countless times. Civilizations arise, develop technology, encounter others unlike themselves, and choose between empathy and destruction. Most choose destruction and fade into cosmic dust. A few choose empathy and join the community of truly advanced beings. The ancient voice continued, seeming to speak directly to each individual listener. The human Elena Vasquez has offered your species a gift beyond price: the ability to understand each other despite your differences. You can accept this gift and evolve beyond your current limitations, or you can destroy it and condemn yourselves to eventual extinction through endless warfare. Emperor Vexithalan felt the weight of cosmic judgment in those words. The Eternal Conclave was offering his civilization a choice that would determine its ultimate fate: accept Elena's technology and evolve toward genuine galactic peace, or reject it and follow the path of countless extinct species that had chosen warfare over understanding. The Emperor made his decision with the eyes of history upon him. Dr. Vasquez, in the name of the Zephyrian Empire and our allies, I formally request your assistance in establishing permanent peace between our peoples. We choose empathy. One by one, the other galactic leaders followed suit. The Kethvar War Council, the Andromedan Congress, the Vorthak Collective, even the artificial intelligences of the Nexus Prime acknowledged that Elena's technology represented their species' best hope for survival and prosperity. Elena smiled as she accepted their surrender to the inevitable. The woman who had stopped the war had become the architect of galactic peace. The consciousness resonator technology would be refined and distributed under strict ethical guidelines, used to enhance diplomatic processes and gradually transform interspecies relations. Years later, as Elena stood in the Grand Assembly of the United Galactic Federation, watching representatives from hundreds of species work together in harmony, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The galaxy still faced challenges and disagreements, but those conflicts were resolved through empathy and understanding, rather than violence and destruction. Humanity had given the galaxy its greatest gift, the reminder that beneath all their biological and cultural differences, conscious beings shared the same fundamental experiences and desires. Elena Vasquez, the woman who had been hunted across known space as a terrorist, was now remembered as the architect of the most peaceful era in galactic history. The war was over. The Age of Understanding had begun.